This is the first time I see
Door probe.
door probe. Yes.
Yeah. So there it is. It's the original Brooker one. That's what it looks like. Got the original Brooker manual here, 1992. Yeah. All the packing tools are in there.
Excellent. Excellent. Hello everyone, I'm Mojtaba and welcome to another episode of A Sip of Chemistry. In this episode, my guest is one of the great researchers in NMR spectroscopy, David Bryce. He is a faculty member at the University of Ottawa and the editor of the Solid State NMR journal. His research covers a wide range of topics, including solid-state NMR studies of halogen bonds and other sigma-hole interactions, solid-state NMR spectroscopy of quadrupolar nuclei, and NMR crystallography. We mainly talked about solid-state NMR. I asked him about the technical aspects of NMR and how machine learning and AI are used in this research area. He's part of editorial boards for journals like Canadian Journal of Chemistry, Chemistry Open, and Results in Chemistry. So we also discussed his thoughts on ChatGPT and how to write, promote, and get citations for articles. Please join me and watch this exciting interview with Professor David Bryce. Thank you so much, Professor, for agreeing doing this interview. I'm so excited about it. Would you tell us about your academic background and walk us through your research interest and research activity once you actually step in this office in your room?
Yeah, thank you for coming to see me. Okay, well, after completing all my high school and that in Ottawa, I did my undergraduate degree in chemistry at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario.
Yeah.
And did an honors project there in physical organic chemistry. And that's where I met Gang Wu, who suggested the possibility of doing a PhD with rod oscillation at Dalhousie University, which is what I did. So I did a PhD at Dalhousie University in Halifax. And after that, I did a postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland with AdBax. I guess that's the end of my education.
Yeah.
And started here at the University of Ottawa in 2005. And research interests, our main focus is NMR spectroscopy, more specifically solid-state NMR.
Yeah.
We're interested in developing the spectroscopy of elements across the periodic table with a lot of applications to non-covalent interactions. We're also doing a lot of quantum chemistry, quantum chemical interpretation of NMR interaction tensors. In the recent years, we've been doing a lot of crystal engineering and mechanochemistry.
Excellent, excellent. That's great. I read it on your webpage that one of your actually aims is establishing solid-state NMR as a tool in characterizing of inorganic and bioinorganic molecules. So tell us more about it and how does it work?
Yeah, I guess the inorganic side of things simply reflects the fact that we're interested in the spectroscopy of a lot of elements beyond proton and carbon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so most of the elements in the periodic table you would classify as inorganic in that sense. So that's where that comes from. And as I say, because most of the elements of the periodic table in principle are amenable to NMR, we follow that interest and we find applications that interest us in largely inorganic systems, but not necessarily. A lot of times they're organic components as well, but typically the systems we're looking at include isotopes other than proton and carbon.
Excellent. Spectrometric identification of organic compounds, that one of your great works. So would you tell us about this book and about your contribution?
Yeah, so I'm a co-author on the 8th edition of the Silverstein book, which has been around for decades. Obviously credit goes to the authors of that book who have, brought it through the first 7 editions. I did some updating and editing for the 8th edition, which I was happy to contribute to, but certainly that book was established long before I got involved. It's a great book. So I occasionally teach a 3rd-year class on that sort of thing. So organic structure determination by NMR, mass spec, IR, that sort of thing. So when the opportunity came to work on that, it was a welcome opportunity.
Excellent. So whenever I'm browsing the journals and I came across with applications like lithium batteries, biomaterials, so I can understand the immediate applications. But some aspect of NMR, actually maybe it's hard to find the immediate application. When you read the title, like the chemical shift tensors or the quadrupolar, calculating the quadrupolar moments. So how does this part of NMR work, and how you can explain it to educated audience?
Yeah, well, I think with any science, there are going to be fundamental and applied aspects. There are going to be fundamental and applied research, publications on the topic. So NMR as a field, it's the same thing. There are people such as myself who enjoy working on fundamental aspects. So perhaps every paper doesn't have a direct application, but we're interested in the fundamentals of, not only developing on NMR, but understanding how these NMR interaction tensors respond to local structure and establishing that base. And I think in science, you need to a certain extent, focus on what you're interested in. You need to be concerned about obtaining funding as well, and making sure your science has an impact. But if you're not interested in it, then it's not so much fun. So I think you have to kind of stick with what interests you, and then you'll stay motivated.
Yeah, I agree. So doing research for science, maybe, there are, I think, two major perspectives: find an application, then work on it, do the research just to tell more about that application, or doing something in fundamental science. It's just not should be based on a specific application. There are 2 approaches, I would say, and you have covered both of them, I guess.
Yeah, as I say, we try to strike a balance between fundamental work and applied work, perhaps with more obvious impact, but always we try to do what we're interested in and what is, what's exciting for the lab.
Yeah, exactly. You are the editor of the Journal of Solid State NMR, Solid State Nuclear Magnetic Resonance. Please tell us about this experience.
Yeah, so I've been the editor of that journal for several years now, and I was fortunate enough to, prior to that, I was recruited as the trends editor. So the trends are a certain type of article, short kind of review style article looking at trends in the field. And when the former editor, Helmut Eckert, was done with the job, fortunately I was asked by him and the publisher to take over. And it's a small journal in terms of number of publications, but I'm happy to say that kind of the impact seems to have increased in recent years. We've had a lot of special issues with a lot of readership. So it's because it's a small journal, it's not too much work, but it's definitely an important job, I think, for the community.
Yeah, excellent. So I think when I compare your time when you were a graduate student with my time. Nowadays, the number of the journals has increased. So obviously, the number of the publications has have increased. So uh, for most of graduate students nowadays, including me, it's hard to keep up with the literature. So, do you have any piece of advice for us? How we can should we read all of them? Should we be selective? So, what's your suggestion?
I mean, certainly when you're starting out, there's all the new literature every day, but there's
Yeah.
also the past, 100 years of literature.
Exactly.
So I think starting out, I mean, you need to read as much as you can, but you also need to be focused, especially with the new literature coming out. You can't do everything. You should focus on what's relevant to your projects, but making sure that you have a broad perspective kind of on the older literature. And I think as you go along, it gets easier because you start to see what's important in the field and what isn't, and you can focus your reading. I mean, I get 30 email alerts a day from different journals, and try to stay on top of things. But I think as a grad student, you might want to start by being somehow more targeted in what you're trying to read, because otherwise you'll be reading all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I spent quite a lot on finding articles, and I save them. Sometimes I feel guilty. I just take a look at the abstract introduction sometimes, and cannot. I don't have the time to read all of them. Yeah, it's quite important to find the balance. Exactly. So another difference between my time and your time when you did your PhD is the nowadays the presence of AI, machine learning, chatbots like ChatGPT. So these things are new, and how graduate students can use them, chatbots like ChatGPT, for writing an article in the journal that you are the editor, solid state NMR. Is there any regulation for using these chatbots?
I would not recommend using chatbots. I would recommend writing it yourself. No, I mean, I think if for any journal, I think if you're putting your name on something, it has to be your work.
Yeah.
Perhaps if you're learning to write, perhaps in English as a second language, for example, there may be useful AI tools for that. But I think ultimately you should not be copying text that's written by a computer.
Yeah.
You need to write it yourself. On the other hand, I think in research there are opportunities to use machine learning. Certainly in NMR, there have been advancements in using machine learning to kind of equal or surpass DFT methods in kind of the speed and accuracy of results. Again, coming back to the journal, this journal is small enough that I can stay on top of every article and be sure what I'm dealing with. I'm sure for some of the larger journals, there are more concerns about being flooded with articles that may be partially or completely written by AI. It's definitely an evolving topic, an evolving issue that is becoming more important in science and in the publishing world and in the world in general.
Yeah, I agree. So just in the case of improving the language, it could be fine, but definitely not just asking chat, please write an introduction for this topic.
No, you don't want to be doing that. And as I say, improving the language, I would not use that directly on an article that you're going to put your name on. I would use that more generally, perhaps, as an aside to work on your writing.
Makes sense. Yeah. So another question about articles and journals. Do you think that authors should advertise their articles on social media? Again, social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, these are not new, but nowadays are used a lot. So do you think that researchers, authors should advertise their article?
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, within limits, I think you have to promote your work. In a way, when you write the paper, that's the end of the story, but in a way, it's the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
So you've written the paper after all this work, but to the rest of the world, it's brand new. So I think it's good. You got to find ways to get the word out. I mean, that's why people go to conferences as well to get their work publicized. Obviously, interact with other people as well. So I think there are certain places for social media, and obviously there are certain social media platforms which are probably better suited to advertising scientific content. But yeah.
So what's the best metric for evaluating an article? Should we just rely on the number of the citation? Is that the only thing we can rely on when we find an article? How we can judge that this is a good piece of work?
Well, I mean, that's what reviewers and editors do every day before the work is even published. So there's no impact factor or number of citations tied to that article when it comes in for peer review. And so that's, again, as people move along in their careers and you get asked to do peer review or perhaps serve as an associate editor, that comes with experience. You know the field, you see a piece of work, you're an expert in this area now, so you have the background and the skills to evaluate. First of all, is this new? Is it well done? How novel is it? How insightful is it? I mean, that comes with experience. I think and the same with a published paper. I mean, papers get cited for various reasons. It's one way, I guess, to assess a form of impact, but I mean, you have to read the paper and use your own brain to figure out what you think of it.
So, yeah, makes sense. So, our evaluation, our knowledge is also another indicator to say, okay, this journal is a good one, although the number of
Well, I mean, you can have
citations
good journals. Good journals can publish bad papers. Weaker journals can publish good papers. You have to read the article.
So, yeah, something is published, it doesn't mean that it has high quality.
Unfortunately, you're right. I mean, being published, there is a stamp of approval there, depending on the editorial process. But in the end, papers will be possibly read by 2-3 reviewers in some cases. So it's it's possible that errors do slip through for sure.
Yeah. So I have some questions about NMR and the other experience you have had. So is there any automated solid state NMR probe, just like solution NMR? In solution NMR, you just throw your sample into a sampler and it's done automatically, everything automatically. How about the NMR, the solid state NMR?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% up to speed on that. I definitely know Brooker and some other companies have solutions to automate a lot of basic and more advanced solid state NMR experiments. We don't have those in our lab, so I'm probably not an authority on what's available on the market. But automation has definitely come into solid state NMR, at least for routine experiments. There are also some other companies selling probes with external auto tuners, depending on what kind of experiment you want to do. So there have definitely been advances in that area. Previous decades, it was not so easy to do this in an automated fashion.
So what nowadays it's better, and in the future maybe the probes, solid state probes, they are actually in terms of technical aspects improve.
I think for sure the probes are always improving. If there's a market for that, I don't. These things a lot of things can be automated if there's a big enough market to do it.
So right now, what's the most technical difficulties you got in running NMR? If you just right now want to address a problem and ask the manufacturer, please fix this problem. We got this problem frequently. What it would be?
Well, I mean, for a lot of the things that we do in my lab, every problem is a little bit different. So if people are doing routine proton carbon or even biomolecular NMR, triple resonance experiments, the manufacturers can really optimize that hardware, optimize the pulse sequences to have everything run smoothly. A lot of the things that we do, everything's a little bit different depending on what isotope we're looking at. So you run into, things that we need are, we have to be concerned with the Q factor of the probe, the bandwidth of the probe, how short and uniform are our pulses, phase switching, that sort of thing. So it depends a little bit on the problem at hand, but a lot of it comes down to how fast are the electronics, how stable are the electronics, how stable is the spinning, how fast is the spinning, all this sort of thing will help to have a good result in general.
Okay, excellent. So we talked about the artificial intelligence, and you referred to how it could be applicable in doing the DFT calculations. Would you elaborate on this and how artificial intelligence could be used in solid state NMR, in analyzing data, the convolution spectra?
I mean, I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence, but I could imagine. I mean, there have been similar kind of, optimization algorithm, optimal control theory that has been used. I'm not an expert, but I could see that, you train an AI model on analyzing a certain set of reference data. You can then use that to then analyze new sets of data. I think it's just a matter of defining the problem and having test data.
Yeah. Would you tell us about the 900 NMR facilities and what it's in Ottawa, not I think in the University of Ottawa, but would you tell us about it and what's the services they provide?
Sure. So the 900 megahertz spectrometer was obtained through a Canada Foundation for Innovation grant almost about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And this instrument was installed in a partnership with the National Research Council Canada here in Ottawa. So it's on their site. And it's a multi-partner facility, or at least it has been for the past, 18 years.
Yeah.
So it's an instrument dedicated to solids with a huge range of probes and a lot of, hundreds of good papers coming out of that facility. The management has been taken over recently by the National Research Council, simply because of funding issues through the university, but the instrument is up and running. There's a cryo probe installed on it now as well, so we can do solids and liquids. It's been a really great advantage for the Canadian NMR community and for me personally. Yeah.
You have used it frequently.
Yes.
Do you like teaching? And the follow-up question is that isn't it hard to teach NMR to undergrad students? Do you think that the current syllabus and curriculum is enough for chemistry students to learn some hard calculations in NMR?
So yes, I like teaching. Otherwise, I wouldn't be at a university. Teaching NMR can be tricky because there can be different approaches, and it depends a bit on the background of the students, as you kind of alluded to. It depends on what program they're in. So here at the University of Ottawa, in addition to pure chemistry, we've got a biopharmaceutical sciences program and a biochemistry program where they might not necessarily have the spectroscopy or quantum background before taking an NMR class. And so you have to know your audience. In some courses, it's more appropriate to take an empirical, spectral interpretation approach as a start. But certainly for the pure chemistry students, we want to be sure that there's a course in there where they can learn some of the basics using a more mathematical approach. And, a lot depends on the student as well, the level of interest. I think in a pure chemistry program, there's always room for a bit more rigor in terms of mathematical background and quantum mechanical courses.
Yeah, that's necessary for them. Otherwise, it's, I think, hard to digest all these calculations that's involved in solid state NMR or NMR in general. The challenges in solid state NMR, if right now you would like to design some projects on solid state NMR, what do you suggest it is? I mean, for young researchers, those who
Mm-hmm.
want work on solid state NMR, what do you suggest? Those are the area that should be covered more.
Well, I think you need to be, if you're starting out as a researcher, you need to be practical again about what are you motivated by, but also where are you going to get funding. So, and again, there are some labs that are a lot more oriented towards real NMR methods development. There are other labs where you might focus on a bigger chemical problem and use NMR as one of your tools.
Yeah.
So again, I think you really need to look at the landscape, depending what country you're in, what is the funding landscape, who are your competitors, what are you interested in, what niche can you find that is interesting to you, that will have impact, that has not been done before. So you need to start thinking about these things, certainly as a grad student and even more as a postdoc. And again, the more you read the literature and attend conferences and write your own papers, you get a feel for what is going on in the world of NMR and science, chemistry, and I can't tell people what to do. Once you get into research and things start happening, it becomes a little bit easier to see where to go next. But at the start, you need to spend some time thinking what you're going to do.
Let's go beyond the lab. What are your hobbies? What do you do at your spare time?
Well, in the winter, definitely skiing, downhill skiing. So we're fortunate around Ottawa to have a few small hills within half-hour drive. And then you can go to Mont Tremblant in less than 2 hours. And we've got, Whiteface and Jay Peak in Vermont and New York State. So definitely downhill skiing in the winter. Music for sure.
Okay, excellent. Do you play?
Sure, yeah.
Which instrument?
Nowadays, mainly piano and guitar, and
excellent.
Bought some drums during the pandemic. So
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, excellent. So, in an imaginary world, what's your job? What would you like to do in parallel imaginary world?
This is a pretty good job.
You will choose again.
Oh, this is a great job.
Yeah.
Faculty member, and I'm on sabbatical this year, so I have even more kind of flexibility to do. No, it's a great job. I mean, you get to set your own destiny and what you want to do with your days and your research.
Yeah, excellent. So you are at a sabbatical now. Would you tell us more about it and what you have done?
So I decided to not go anywhere for an extended period because I have responsibilities at home and here with my students, but I've been traveling a fair bit to attend some conferences, some that I don't normally get to. So I've been to France and Switzerland and Italy and Australia, and just back from Japan a couple weeks ago. So there's I'm able to hit a few conferences that I'm not able to hit every other year because of teaching, and making a lot of new connections in some of these places, meeting people I haven't interacted with as much before.
Yeah, excellent. In Japan, you attended a conference, yeah? Was there any presentation, any talk that you said, wow, that's a great piece of work, and you have enjoyed it really?
Yeah, so this was a symposium as part of an institute at Hokkaido University called the ICRED Institute, and I was invited there by Mingu Jin, who's an associate professor, and I actually saw his talk at the International Union for Crystallography Symposium in Melbourne last August, and he gave a very impressive talk using deuterium NMR to look at motions in geared molecular rotors, essentially. And so he was my host in Hokkaido, and they have a great institute there, and I saw a great couple days of talks, not just on NMR, but on a whole range of kind of chemical reactivity and discovery, a lot of computational work there. They have kind of informatics and computation is really been incorporated in with the kind of synthetic aspects of chemistry at that institute.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your sabbatical. I don't know when it's done.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, no problem. Is there any other thing that you would like to talk about and I didn't ask?
No, I think you've covered it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so we've got a small wet lab because obviously we're NMR people. I don't need a huge wet lab, but we've set up with a couple fume hoods and various tools. This is one of our newer purchases, a resonant acoustic mixer for doing some mechanochemistry experiments. We also got a home-built co-sublimation furnace here for preparing novel co-crystals. You can put materials in at either end. There's a glass tube in the middle. It's all computer controlled. And another fume hood and basic setup here for making compounds. We've got a glove box in here. Glove boxes here, our ball mill for doing some mechanochemistry over here. Over here. This is one of the NMR rooms.
Okay, NMR room.
Yeah, so this is a 600 for liquids of a cryoprobe. And over here we've got a 200 wide bore for solids, which is very handy to have for things like deuterium and phosphorus, silicon, carbon. This is solids only.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Hey, so yeah, and here we've got, oh, there's the team I was just talking about. They run the NMR facility.
Oh.
Yeah. So in here we've got 500 wide bore, liquids and solids, and 400 wide bore for solids. This is our wall of probes.
So you got several probes.
We've got the usual probes, and then we've got this door probe, which is fun, double rotation NMR. We've got a nice single crystal probe, which is nice to have, and all the usual other stuff.
You use the double rotation probe?
We used it a few years ago. It's been a while. Maybe again. Maybe again. You need the right problem.
This is the first time I see
Door probe.
door probe. Yes.
Yeah. So there it is, original Brooker one. That's what it looks like. Got the original Brooker manual here, 1992. Yeah. All the packing tools are in there.
Excellent. Excellent.